What if I told you the Israel-Palestine conflict dominating headlines today is just a family feud between two brothers that has raged for over 3,000 years? The Israel-Palestine conflict goes all the way back to Abraham, the father of nations, and his two sons, Isaac and Ishmael. Their struggle set the stage for a battle over the promised land that has never truly ended. The Bible provides us with astonishing insight into this age-old conflict, tracing the journey from God's covenant with Abraham to the establishment of modern Israel and the continuing fight over the same sacred ground. In this video, we'll dive deep into the 3,000-year history of the Israel-Palestine conflict, uncovering how biblical prophecies, ancient rivalries, and religious significance have all played a part in shaping this ongoing struggle. Whether you're familiar with the Bible or not, you'll discover the surprising roots of this conflict and learn how it has evolved from ancient times to the present. Stay with me, because the revelations from the Bible about this conflict may change everything you thought you knew about the Israel-Palestine dispute. The roots of the Israel-Palestine conflict can be traced all the way back to Abraham, the patriarch of both the Jewish and Arab nations. According to the Bible, Abraham was called by God to leave his homeland and journey to Canaan, where God promised him that his descendants would inherit the land. In Genesis 15:18-21, God made a covenant with Abraham, promising him a vast territory. "To your descendants I give this land, from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates." This land would later be known as Israel, but the question remained, who would inherit it? Abraham had two sons, Ishmael, born to Hagar, an Egyptian slave, and Isaac, born to his wife Sarah. The birth of these two sons created a family rift, one that would set the stage for centuries of conflict. Though Ishmael was Abraham's firstborn son, God chose Isaac as the heir to the covenant. Genesis 17:19. God promised that through Isaac, the chosen people of Israel would come. This decision created a divide. The descendants of Isaac would become the Israelites, and the descendants of Ishmael would become the Arab peoples. This sibling rivalry laid the groundwork for the modern-day conflict between Jews and Palestinians. From a biblical perspective, the conflict is about inheritance, not just of land, but of spiritual legacy. The tension between the descendants of Isaac, the Jews, and Ishmael, the Arabs, is seen as the root of the Israel-Palestine struggle for the land promised to Abraham. The concept of the Promised Land is central to understanding the Israel-Palestine conflict. After God chose Isaac over Ishmael, the descendants of Isaac, later known as the Israelites, became the chosen people who would inherit the land of Canaan, which eventually became Israel. After the Exodus from Egypt, under the leadership of Moses, the Israelites journeyed for 40 years through the wilderness before entering the Promised Land. Under Joshua's leadership, they conquered the land of Canaan and divided it among the 12 tribes of Israel. In the Bible, God specifically outlines the borders of the Promised Land, which includes modern-day Israel, Palestine, and parts of Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and Egypt. This territory was seen as the eternal inheritance of the Israelites, with Jerusalem serving as the heart of their religious and political life. However, the Palestinians, who are primarily Arab Muslims, also have deep connections to this land. Many Palestinians trace their ancestry back to Ishmael, and thus they see themselves as the rightful heirs to the land promised to Abraham. In their view, the land of Palestine has always been home to Arab peoples long before the establishment of the modern state of Israel in 1948. This conflicting claim to the land is one of the core issues fueling the modern-day Israel-Palestine conflict. From a biblical perspective, The Israelites were promised this land by God himself. But the Palestinians, descending from Ishmael, also see the land as their birthright. After the conquest of Canaan, the 12 tribes of Israel formed a loose confederation of tribes. Over time, the Israelites demanded a king, and Saul became the first king of Israel. After his death, David from the tribe of Judah became king and established Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. His son Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem, solidifying the city's place as the spiritual center of the Jewish people. But after Solomon's death, the kingdom split into two: the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. The northern kingdom eventually fell to the Assyrians in 722 BC, and the southern kingdom of Judah was conquered by the Babylonians in 586 BC. The destruction of Jerusalem and the temple led to the Jewish exile, marking a significant turning point in the history of the Israelites. During this time, Jerusalem and much of the land of Israel was under foreign occupation. The Israelites, now dispersed throughout the Babylonian Empire, longed to return to their homeland and rebuild their temple. This period of exile fostered a deep connection between the Jewish people and the land of Israel, which is reflected in biblical prophecies about the eventual restoration of Israel. The Babylonian exile set the stage for centuries of foreign rule over the land of Israel. From the Persians to the Greeks to the Romans, the land that the Israelites once ruled became a battleground for empires. And yet, the Jewish people held on to the promise that one day they would return to their homeland and be restored as a nation. The next major shift in the Israel-Palestine conflict came under Roman rule. In 63 BC, the Romans took control of Judea, which included Jerusalem. It was under Roman occupation that Jesus Christ was born, and the religious landscape of the region was about to change forever. During the time of Jesus, Jerusalem remained the heart of Jewish religious life. The Second Temple stood as a symbol of God's presence with his people, and Jews from around the world made pilgrimages to the holy city. However, the Roman occupation led to growing resentment among the Jews, many of whom longed for a Messiah who would overthrow their oppressors and restore the kingdom of Israel. But when Jesus came, he preached a different message. Rather than leading a political revolt, Jesus called for a spiritual kingdom. His message transcended national boundaries and focused on the kingdom of God, rather than the kingdom of Israel. After Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, his disciples spread his message throughout the Roman Empire, and Christianity began to grow. However, tensions between the Jews and Romans continued to escalate, leading to the Jewish revolt in AD 66. The Romans crushed the rebellion and destroyed Jerusalem in AD 70, including the Second Temple. The destruction of the temple was a devastating blow to the Jewish people, and many were forced into exile once again. For the next 2 millennia, Jews lived in diaspora with no homeland of their own. During this time, the land of Israel, now part of the Roman Empire, became home to a growing population of Arabs, who would later adopt Islam as their religion after the rise of Muhammad in the 7th century. In the 7th century, a new power arose in the Middle East, Islam. After the death of the Prophet Muhammad, Arab armies swept across the region, conquering much of the Byzantine and Persian empires, including the land of Israel. The city of Jerusalem was captured by Muslim forces in AD 638, and it became an important city in the Islamic world. For the Muslims, Jerusalem was not only significant because of its connection to Judaism and Christianity, but also because of its association with the Prophet Muhammad's night journey, during which Muhammad is said to have ascended to heaven from the Dome of the Rock. This event made Jerusalem the third holiest city in Islam, after Mecca and Medina. Under Muslim rule, the land that had once been Israel was now known as Palestine. The Arab population of the region grew, and Jerusalem became an important center of Islamic scholarship and culture. However, Jews continued to live in the city and practice their faith, though they remained a minority. For centuries, the land of Palestine remained under Islamic rule, passing through the hands of various empires, including the Umayyads, Abbasids, Fatimids, and Ottomans. The Jewish population remained small, though many Jews longed to return to their ancestral homeland. The next major turning point in the Israel-Palestine conflict came in the late 19th century with the rise of Zionism, a political movement that sought to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine. The Zionist movement was driven by several factors, including rising anti-Semitism in Europe and the longing of the Jewish people to return to the land they believed God had promised them. The birth of Zionism marked the beginning of a new chapter in the Israel-Palestine conflict. The movement was founded by Theodor Herzl, a Jewish journalist from Austria-Hungary, who believed that the only solution to Jewish persecution was the establishment of a Jewish state. Herzl's vision resonated with Jews across Europe, many of whom faced increasing hostility and violence, especially in Russia and Eastern Europe, where pogroms, violent riots against Jews, were common. In 1897, Herzl organized the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland, where the goal of establishing a Jewish homeland in Palestine was formally declared. This goal was based on the belief that Palestine was the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, and that they had a biblical right to return and reclaim it. At the time, Palestine was under the control of the Ottoman Empire, and its population was predominantly Arab Muslim, with small communities of Christians and Jews. Despite the Arab majority, the Zionist movement began encouraging Jewish immigration to Palestine, and by the early 20th century, thousands of Jews were moving to the region. However, the growing Jewish presence in Palestine led to tensions with the Arab population, who saw the Jewish immigrants as a threat to their land and way of life. These tensions would only increase in the years to come, as both Jews and Arabs began to lay claim to the land of Palestine. The First World War, 1914 to 1918, had a profound impact on the future of Palestine. During the war, the Ottoman Empire sided with Germany, and by the end of the war it had been defeated and its territories were divided among the victorious Allied powers. Palestine came under the control of Britain, which was given a mandate by the League of Nations to administer the territory. One of the most significant developments during this period was the issuance of the Balfour Declaration in 1917. In this declaration, the British government expressed its support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. The declaration was a major victory for the Zionist movement, but it also fueled anger and resentment among the Arab population, who feared that Jewish immigration would lead to the loss of their land. The British mandate in Palestine lasted from 1920 to 1948, and during this time, Jewish immigration to the region increased dramatically. The Zionist movement worked tirelessly to build Jewish settlements, establish infrastructure, and prepare for the eventual creation of a Jewish state. However, as more Jews arrived in Palestine, tensions between Jews and Arabs escalated, leading to violent clashes and uprisings. The most significant of these uprisings was the Arab Revolt of 1936 to 1939, during which Palestinian Arabs revolted against both British rule and Jewish immigration. The revolt was eventually crushed by the British, but it highlighted the deep divisions between the Jewish and Arab populations of Palestine. The Holocaust during World War II, 1939 to 1945, had a devastating impact on the Jewish people, with 6 million Jews murdered by the Nazis in concentration camps and extermination camps across Europe. The horror of the Holocaust galvanized international support for the creation of a Jewish homeland, as it became clear that Jews needed a safe place where they could live without fear of persecution. In 1947, the United Nations voted to partition Palestine into 2 states, one Jewish and one Arab, with Jerusalem designated as an international city under UN control. The Jewish leaders accepted the partition plan, but the Arab leaders rejected it, arguing that it was unfair to the Arab population, who made up the majority of the inhabitants of Palestine at the time. Despite Arab opposition, on May 14, 1948, the Jewish community in Palestine, led by David Ben-Gurion, declared the establishment of the State of Israel. The next day, Arab armies from Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon invaded Israel, sparking the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Israel emerged victorious from the war, but the conflict had far-reaching consequences. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled or were expelled from their homes during the war, and they became refugees in neighboring Arab countries. The question of what to do with the Palestinian refugees has remained a central issue in the Israel-Palestine conflict ever since. Since the creation of Israel in 1948, the Palestinians have been engaged in a struggle for statehood and self-determination. The West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, which were intended to be part of the Arab state in the UN partition plan, were occupied by Israel after the 1967 Six-Day War. The Israeli occupation of these territories has been a major source of tension in the Israel-Palestine conflict. The Palestinians, led by the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, and later by Hamas in Gaza, have sought to establish an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. However, efforts to achieve a two-state solution have repeatedly failed, and the conflict continues to this day. The situation has been further complicated by the construction of Israeli settlements in the West Bank, which are considered illegal under international law, but which Israel continues to build. These settlements have created a patchwork of Israeli-controlled areas within the West Bank, making it difficult to create a contiguous Palestinian state. The conflict has led to multiple wars, uprisings, known as intifadas, and peace efforts, including the Oslo Accords in the 1990s and various international initiatives. Yet, the core issues, borders, refugees, settlements, and the status of Jerusalem, remain unresolved. For many Christians, the Israel-Palestine conflict is not just a political issue, but also a matter of biblical prophecy. The Bible contains numerous prophecies about the land of Israel, the Jewish people, and the end times, leading some to believe that the modern-day conflict is part of God's plan for the fulfillment of prophecy. One of the most cited prophecies is found in Ezekiel 36-37, where God promises to restore the land of Israel and bring his people back from exile. Many Christians believe that the creation of the modern state of Israel in 1948 was a fulfillment of this prophecy, and that the ongoing conflict is a sign that we are living in the last days. Other prophecies, such as the War of Gog and Magog in Ezekiel 38-39, describe a future invasion of Israel by a coalition of nations, which some believe includes modern-day Iran and Russia. This war is seen as a precursor to the second coming of Christ and the establishment of God's kingdom on earth. However, while many see the conflict as part of God's prophetic plan, Others caution against interpreting every event in the Middle East as a fulfillment of prophecy. The Bible calls Christians to be peacemakers, Matthew 5:9, and to seek justice for all people, including both Jews and Palestinians. While the Bible provides insight into the origins of the conflict, it also calls us to seek peace and pursue justice. The Israel-Palestine conflict is complex, and while there are no easy answers, understanding its biblical foundation can help us approach it with greater wisdom and discernment. In the end, whether through political negotiations or divine intervention, the ultimate resolution of the conflict will rest in the hands of God, whose plan for Israel, Palestine, and the world continues to unfold.